Have you ever sat at a laptop wanting to start the task, knowing exactly what to do, and somehow just watched yourself open a fourth tab instead? You're not really avoiding the work, you just can't quite seem to move. Most of us were taught to call that laziness, and honestly, it might be the wrong word entirely. It might be the wrong category of word. If you've been telling yourself the problem is just willpower, you're not alone. You're also probably not right. There's a quieter explanation for the freeze, one that lives in the body well before it ever shows up in the mind, and one most workplaces have, honestly, no real language for. So today, let's sit with this one together, slowly. You've probably been using the same word for years, some version of lazy or unmotivated or bad with discipline. Maybe it came from a parent, maybe a manager who never quite said it out loud. Maybe just the long silence after a missed deadline when no one really said anything and your own voice filled in the gap. The word is so familiar by now you've kind of stopped noticing that it doesn't actually fit. It just sits there, doing quiet damage. Naming yourself wrong every time you hesitate. Confirming a story that was never really yours. And the trouble with a wrong label is that it doesn't just describe what you're doing. It changes how you treat yourself when you're doing it. The voice in your head gets harder, colder, less patient. Here's the part most of us were never taught. Laziness suggests a choice. You chose to skip the work. You chose to scroll. You chose comfort over effort. But if you've ever genuinely wanted to do something and watched your own body refuse to move, you already know that explanation just breaks. The choice wasn't really available. The body got somewhere first, and you kind of arrived after. Looking for an explanation that would still hold up. Lazy was the closest one within reach, so you grabbed it. The thing we keep calling laziness is truthfully a much older response with a much more specific name, and it's something researchers have been studying for decades. In nervous system research, there's a state called the freeze response. It isn't exhaustion. It isn't low motivation. It's the body's oldest survival setting, the one that kicks in when fighting and running both look for some reason off the table. Researcher Stephen Porges, who developed polyvagal theory back in the 1990s, described it as a kind of shutdown. The body has decided, basically, that the situation isn't safe to move through, so instead of mobilizing, it conserves. It dims you down a little, holding back the energy for later in case you actually end up needing it. And when this shutdown becomes the default at work, the way it does for a lot of us, it stops looking like a survival response. It just looks like you not getting things done. Honestly, that's where it gets expensive. So let's look at how this actually lands inside a work week. Number 1. The Sunday night dread that shows up before any task does. Your body has already read the calendar. The week hasn't really started, but the freeze has. You can call it anxious. The word for what's happening is closer to bracing. Bracing is basically what nervous systems do when they expect a hit. And once the bracing starts on Sunday, Monday morning isn't really the first day of your week. It's the second one. Number 2. The 40 minutes you spend staring at the screen and producing, honestly, nothing. You've opened the document. You've reread the first line. You've reorganized the desktop. No judgment here. Your prefrontal cortex is, basically offline, and trying harder seems to push it deeper. So you try harder. That doesn't work either. The freeze doesn't respond to effort. It responds to safety, which is honestly harder to engineer at a desk. Number 3. The performance review that makes your mouth go dry and your mind go blank. That isn't really nerves. That's a system shutdown happening live in real time. Notice you can't think of the simple answer? Notice you remember it perfectly on the drive home. The freeze. Well, had the wheel. And the part that compounds it is you walk out thinking you must have looked unprepared. You weren't unprepared. You were, in that moment, kind of unreachable. Number 4. The Sunday afternoon Slack check that pulls something tight in your chest before you've even read a message. Gallup's 2024 workplace report found people under ineffective management are around 60% more likely to feel daily stress than those under decent management. So chances are, your body has been collecting data on your manager longer than you've been aware of it. The notification doesn't have to say anything threatening. By that point, the pattern has already done the talking. So if any of this actually sounds familiar, here's the part worth taking with you. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You are not undisciplined. You've been responding to something your body read as a threat, repeatedly, for long enough that the shutdown, got fluent. That's honestly not a character flaw. That's a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do. And the moment you stop fighting the freeze and start reading it as a signal, something pretty quiet shifts. You stop adding shame to the exhaustion. The exhaustion on its own is enough to carry. You don't have to drag self-blame along behind it. Most of us were never really given the language for this. We learned how to push through. We learned how to apologize for being tired. We didn't actually learn how to listen to a body that was telling us, quietly and patiently, that something at work had crossed a line. So, before you reach for the productivity app. Maybe just try noticing instead. Notice when the freeze shows up. Notice what came right before it. Notice what kind of meeting, what kind of message, what kind of week. Notice what changes when you stop calling yourself lazy and start calling it what it actually is. Which of these moments sounded most like you? The Sunday night one? The blank screen one? The performance review one? Tell the others in the comments. Sometimes naming it, slowly, in plain words, is where the quiet work begins. We'll sit with this together next time.